exercise. You ready?
Yep.
All right, so here we go. So 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. All right, folks, welcome back to the Trauma Therapist Podcast. I am very excited to have back Michael Remole. Michael, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
So Michael has most recently was with us in June. He's been working with children and families for close to 2 decades in a variety of capacities, including as a multi-systemic therapist, clinical director, children's pastor, camp counselor, and speaker. After serving as a children's pastor, he went on to obtain his Master of Arts in Clinical Counseling from Ashland Theological Seminary. Following that, Michael worked at the Buckeye Ranch in Columbus, Ohio as a multi-systemic therapist, working with individuals between 12 and 18 years old, as well as their families. The primary focus there was to work with the family system to assist children who are having difficulties with behavior. Michael founded and leads Gateway Family Services of Illinois, providing trauma-focused equine-assisted psychotherapy, individual and family therapy. And I was just realizing, I think I might speak too fast sometimes. Michael, it's so good to have you back here. You know, last time I think you were here, we were talking about your incredible work putting together the conference, Rising Tide. You had Bruce Perry there, which was amazing. But we wanted to kind of focus in and get more specific about equine therapy. And you know, before we were recording here, you were saying, well, what about for those people who like don't have access to horses, or they're not clients aren't going home with horses? But before we do that, I think there are a lot of people out there who are like, okay, equine therapy is with horses, but what is it?
Yeah, that is a huge question. And equine assisted psychotherapy is that's a term that gets thrown around quite a bit. And so I want to kind of explain how we utilize trauma-focused equine assisted psychotherapy, which is deeply rooted in the neurosequential model by Dr. Perry, and is the model of therapy we utilize is called natural lifemanship, which was founded by Tim Job and Bettina Schultz-Job. And so what it looks at is, how do we understand the way the human brain develops, and how does the horse develop, and how do we work together with relationship logic to connect the human and horse to where it's beneficial for both of them, and that healing takes place for both. And so this, there's a lot of neuroscience behind this work, but it's a lot of stuff that really doesn't just apply in our sessions. It applies in life, and their relationship principles. And Tim Job always says a good principle is a good principle if it can be applied anywhere. And so what we do in sessions, we want to make sure can transfer outside of these sessions.
Okay, wait, hang on. So you're saying a lot of important stuff here. First of all, you mentioned founders of a theory, Tim Job.
Yes, Jobe.
Jobe. Okay, and what was the name of their?
Natural lifemanship.
Natural lifemanship. Okay. So just to be clear here, so you're saying that this therapy is not just for the clients, the human clients, but it's also to make sure things are working well with the horses?
Yeah,
wow.
Because the thing that I think is so important for us is that we take care of our horses as well. They're not just a metaphor or a mirror. It's an actual relationship. And the beautiful work is that the horse gets to heal as well in this process when it's done right. So, you know, taking a horse that's a wild Mustang, we want this to be beneficial for them as well as for the human. We don't want to just use them for our benefit. Because if we think about that principle is, if I get to use this relationship for my benefit only, when I leave here, every other relationship has that same principle. So we want to make sure that everybody, that it's a balanced relationship between horse and human.
So do the clients understand that going into this?
Yeah. So, okay. And a lot of our clients are very well versed in their clinical experiences. They could probably tell me how to do my job, you know, because they've seen so many therapists. And when they come here, part of the work is to help them help their horse. Wow. And that is where a lot of really powerful work comes in. You know, we're working with individuals with a lot of complex trauma. And so their relational needs are different, and their way that we kind of have to tweak our therapy or approach the therapy is a little bit different. And we talk about relational trauma, or trauma that takes place in the context of relationships, needs relationships to help heal it. But a human relationship sometimes is really tough for our clients to navigate. And because we have all these negative associations based off of our previous experiences and what we kind of assume, well, you're a male, you're going to respond this certain way, or you're a teacher, you respond this way. We have all these associations, but most of us don't have those associations with horses.
Mm-hmm.
So
I think most of us, kind of myself included, quite frankly, thought that equine therapy is done. A client gets to hang out with horses, and how cool is that? They get to pet them and ride them. But you're talking about something much more healing, much more involved, much more relational, as you're saying.
Yeah, and a little bit, I would say, more comprehensive than your typical riding program. It's looking at the whole being, the whole beings, if you will, the horse and human. And if it's not good for one, it's not good for both. So with that, when the client comes to our session, they get a friendship horse or relationship horse and a riding horse, because there's a lot of work that gets to be done, both sides of that. And I'll kind of explain that process. But when we're thinking about relationships and how tricky relationships can be, and we're talking about how important it is for those relationships to provide healing, we need kind of a neutral environment to where we can start to begin to build some healthy pathways.
Mm-hmm.
So while the limbic system, or the relational part of our brain, is getting activated, we can start to experience that and not have to respond in the negative ways that we have in the past. And just a cool side note, a horse has a relational or limbic system part of their brain as well. And so that we're helping them recognize that safety, that this relationship is safe. And they're providing feedback for the client that says, I feel safe, let's do this relationship together.
How did you decide to do this model? I mean, I'm assuming there are a lot of, or several, equine models for treatment.
Yeah, there's a lot of different ones. And what I love about natural lifemanship is the way that it takes science, and it help me understand what I knew about my experience with horses, because I grew up with horses and I knew the power of horses in healing. And, when you get done with going on a long ride, you feel good. You feel like almost like that runner's high. Well,
Mm-hmm.
What's happening is that rhythm of the horseback riding is providing that organization for my brain. So it's helping me relax. It's helping me reorganize my brain. So I am getting that same thing as, that bilateral stimulation. So when I found natural lifemanship, I saw the clinical world combined with my experience, and it just connected in a powerful way. So, and that's what kind of pushed me into Dr. Perry's work, as well as deepening my understanding in the neurosequential process.
Mm-hmm. And he of course talks a lot about rhythm. Dr. Perry talks a lot about rhythm. Okay, so I don't know if you want to go here now, but I'd like to get specific and see, even if you can walk us through a particular example of what it was like how someone comes to you and what you do. Where would you like to go right now in terms of?
Yeah, so I want to share a cool story, because this just happened this last week, and you kind of see how it's beneficial for horse and human. So I had a young client who had just lost her mother, and grandparents were raising her, and came to us and said, help, we don't know what to do. And I said, go ahead and bring her out to the farm. And I was terrified. I didn't know exactly what to do either, but I just knew she needed to be around the horses. And my horse, Ginger, was orphaned at 6 weeks old. So they should typically be around their mom from 4 to 6 months. And so she'd only been around her mom for a few weeks. She'd been raised like a dog, and she really didn't know, how to interact with humans or other horses, terrified. This horse was not safe to be around humans at the time, but this client showed up, and Ginger, my horse, runs up to her, and I'm standing there kind of terrified, and she just put her muzzle right against the little girl's face. And the two are standing there, and I'm just like holding back tears, because I'm recognizing the power of the connection of these two who both had experienced that intense loss of their mom. And I said, "Hey, kiddo, do you want to know a little bit about Ginger?" And she said, "Sure." And I said that she had lost her mom too. And she turns around, she said, "My mommy sent Ginger to help me."
Oh gosh.
And that was
Dude, come on.
it's a
That's
beautiful
crazy. It's
moment.
beautiful. Yeah.
And what is really neat is that horse who was not safe to be around humans, that little girl is now riding her because of the work that they've done together in session. And this last week, she was having a rough go, the Ginger, the horse was. And my client said, maybe she's just sad. Maybe she's just missing her mom. When I miss my mom, this is how I feel too. And just began to unpack some of her grieving that she's been doing for years. But she was worried about her horse who was also grieving. And so that's the beautiful part of the relationship, where the client was worried about her friend Ginger. And in the same time, she was able to start to heal as well, and to grieve together. It was a beautiful moment.
So what happened after that moment where the horse came and kind of nuzzled up against her? What was the kind of first session like? What do you do? How does it unfold?
Yeah, so the horses, what we've taken and looked at is, how do the horses interact with each other in the herd, and how do we begin to build a connection and a relationship with them in the same way that they would, that's natural to them in their herd environment. So this little kiddo started to make requests of Ginger. Can I brush you, and are you okay with it? Can I put the halter on you, and are you okay with it? And all the while that this is happening, the client is having to do her own work. And this is where, we're practicing some of our self-regulation strategies, container, let's throw that thought out, those things that might slow down that process or get in the way of the process with the horse. So that's where it's giving the client real life examples and opportunities to practice those skills. Because the horse is a prey animal, they're going to give us feedback right away. So if my client comes in and they're, all out of sorts, my horse is going to be like, "Whoa, I'm not quite, comfortable with this." And it provides feedback, unbiased feedback that the client can receive. If you were to tell your client, "Hey, kiddo, let's kind of take it down a notch," they might take offense to that. But if their horse kind of nudges them, or, doesn't want to be close to them, they're able to receive that feedback a little bit better and make adjustments. Because that feedback is quick from the horse.
Now, in that specific example, if the horse did do that, would the therapist like highlight that or observe that verbally? I'm kind of interested in what or how much verbalization goes on.
Yeah, there's a lot of silence in these sessions, and we let the horses kind of provide a lot of that feedback. But a lot of that is problem solving. What do you think's going on with our horse, with Ginger right now? What do you think she might need from us? And then there's also the time, the opportunities to say, when you've experienced something like this, what would have been helpful for you?
Mm-hmm.
So they're being able to identify a need, read social cues, and be able to understand a little bit about what's going on with the horse and what they personally could do to help their horse. And in that, we're keeping in mind the neurosequential process the whole time for horse and human. So if I'm noticing that the client is starting to really dysregulate and kind of come undone, we might engage in some of those rhythmic pattern repetitive movements. We might go for a walk. We might have them swing the rope. We might have them, do a little tapping on their legs, stuff that's going to help them organize and engage the lower parts of their brain so that they're more present and able to make that request and connection to the horse. An interesting fact is, when if a horse feels trapped, they will panic a lot more than if they can move their feet. So if a horse starts to get nervous, we can take them for a walk, and that helps them settle in. Well, it's the same for us. When we start to get anxious and, out of sorts, just that bilateral movement can really help us start to regulate.
Yeah, I mean, I love this, man. There's just something so profound about it. It's like you can't argue with the reaction of the horse, right? Like you said, it's giving you unbiased feedback, immediate feedback. Also, as you're thinking, as you're speaking, I'm thinking to myself, I mean, clients must get really close to these horses.
Yeah, we have our horses get cards in the mail, they get their stalls decorated, they get invited to birthday parties, all that stuff. It's a beautiful thing, because they are building a deep connection. And what we love to tell clients when they graduate from our program is our horses will remember their smell for the rest of their life.
Wow.
And because they've had a positive experience with them. And so we've had kids that have come back, they're now adults, and they come back to the farm, and our horses go up to them right away and know who they are, and that without
Oh
a
my
shadow of a doubt,
gosh.
they know who they are. It's a beautiful thing. So it's beneficial for both horse and human. And what I also love is, if I'm going to be totally honest, this work has helped me do my own work, because out there in the pasture, out in the arena, the horse doesn't know who the client is. And so if I've got stuff going on,
You mean who
that
has
horse,
that label, client? Yeah.
exactly. Yes, we're
Yeah.
all the clients, we're all out there together. And so I have had to do a lot of my own work as well. So, and I'll talk a little bit more about that, but I think that has been so powerful for me, is not just watching the client, but the work, the personal work and the personal journey. But to go back to the process with the horses and the client, the other thing that is really quite powerful is we can ride. With this model of therapy, we do incorporate the riding component. And so we're able to really look at that neurosequential process. What regulates, what organizes the brainstem is rhythmic, pattern, repetitive sensory input. So I'm on the horse and I'm moving, I'm getting the input from all around me, and that's helping me regulate. And then the diencephalon is rhythmic, repetitive, pattern, repetitive movement. So I'm moving both sides of my body. I'm engaging my core to keep myself upright, and my body is moving. And then the relational part, I'm on top of this relational being that I'm working on building a connection with. And so there's that component. And then the part that we add in there is the high level thinking part is, can we do different problem solving activities, and can we engage that neocortex? So we're really working through that neurosequential process, all while they're riding. And that may be a simple thing like spelling their horse's name, or, I had a kid who was struggling with math facts, and we started doing his math facts up there. He aced his test the next day. His teacher was like, you need to have him ride every day.
Oh my gosh.
But it's because it's providing that that rhythm that they need, that sensory input that's helping their, build a more fully integrated brain.
The therapy here, Michael, I mean, it just sounds so rich. It just sounds so rich and healthy and healing in a way that just like, therapist to client couldn't possibly be. Talk a little more about maybe some other examples of people you've worked with and what their response was like working with these horses. I can imagine there's just been so many.
Yeah. So we talk about the principles of pressure a lot, and holding space for clients, and that has rung true with a lot of our clients who are resistant. And one of the stories that I remember was, we had asked the client, would you like to hang out with your relationship horse or your riding horse? And I said, which one would you like to start with today? And he was so mad. He was like, nope, this is stupid. I'm not doing it. And he stood with his arms crossed about 10 feet away from the fence. And his relationship horse was Haas. And we sit on 13 acres, not a huge property, but Haas was far enough away, out eating his hay. And that kid stood there, and he's just ticked off. You can tell he's really fighting it. And Haas comes running up to the gate. And the kid starts, you can see his cheeks, he's fighting in that smile. And he's recognizing the fact that this horse wanted to connect with him and knew he was there. And what was really neat was this kid had been in therapy most of his life, with a very complex history of trauma. And Haas came to the farm while he was here and had been in 4 different foster homes. He was rescued as well, and was in 4 foster homes before he finally came to live with us. And this kid said, Haas, I get it. I get it. I know what that's like, because you can't trust anybody.
Mm.
And so the two of them got to do some really neat work together. But what was cool on that morning was, as Haas ran up, the two of them ran, like, kind of went to each other in the pasture and just connected. And you could tell that that kid finally felt safe in that connection, and that Haas did as well.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
How long had that client been there when this particular instance happened?
It
How many
had taken
sessions?
about 7 months before that.
Wow.
Yeah. So we're talking a kid that for several of our sessions, it took place in the driveway because he refused to get out of the car.
Mm-hmm.
He knew therapy, he knew therapists just, he had kind of gone through that cycle of community mental health centers where he, saw lots of different therapists over a short time. And I was new, and he just figured I was going to be like everybody else and leave. And so that was the process. It slowly took us that long. And about, I guess, he had been here 7 months when that happened, but Haas had been here about 2 when the two of them started to make that connection.
Were you the therapist?
Yes.
So how did you, as a therapist, handle that situation with this client, this particular client who'd been to so many different therapists, and yet this, I'm guessing, was a different context? Had he ever been with horses before?
He had not been with horses. Okay. And what was interesting for him, we always talk about how horses will pick our clients a lot of times. And the day that Haas was out in the pasture, we were walking along the fence, and Haas ran over to him. And the kid he's lit up, just like, oh my word, what's going on? And that's how he knew this is supposed to be my friendship horse. But as that process, the thing that we needed to keep in mind was this kid needed to feel safe. He needed to feel like he could trust me and that he could feel safe here. So we did a lot of parallel stuff. We did a lot of walking. We did a lot of, he was really aggressive. And so we would take hammer and nails, and we would take a tree stump, and he would just pound those nails into the tree stump, just getting some of that frustration out. And he would talk about how he just, that was good for him, that he got to be a kid, that he got to have fun. But everything was done from a parallel, like side by side. And you could tell he was very uncomfortable when I was directly on in front of him. So I learned pretty quickly, everything needs to be side by side with him. And as you know, his inability, because of his complex trauma, his neglect was early on. For the first 9 months of his life, he didn't get a whole lot of interaction from his caregiver. And he had a difficulty reading social cues accurately. And so whenever I was in front of him, the thing that I am now learning is that his systems were trying to read me and couldn't. So he was in a stress response. So by me just positioning my body beside him, it allowed that stress response to kind of come back down and recognize that I was not as much of a threat as he thought. And it allows his system to not have to try and read me as much.
Wow.
So,
man, this is so interesting to me and just so inspiring, Michael. I mean, I'm seriously, I mean, I talk to people on this podcast all the time, and yet to hear these stories of these horses and the way they're interacting with these clients is just, it's beautiful, man. Yeah. I don't know how you deal with it. It's too much. It's incredible. It really is.
Yeah. And the part of this is we get to watch the beauty unfold all the time. And sometimes it's not, beautiful. It's clunky. Relationships get awkward and they're messy, and clients get mad. Horses get frustrated. Horses, so we get to be a part of that. But man, it is such a rewarding process to watch when you have a kid that says, I'm going to ride this horse today. And, they want to try and figure out how to do that. And can they get their horse to cooperate with them, to see the confidence that's built, the assurance that relationship is safe. Those things, man, that makes all those really tough days worth it.
So up front at the top of the conversation, you have talked about kind of providing some information for those therapists out there who are like, well, okay, great. This is great. I don't have a horse. What do I do?
Yeah. So one of the things that we look at is when clients leave here, we want to make sure the things that we're teaching here apply elsewhere. And so we look at that. What are those things that help regulate the brainstem and the diencephalon, limbic system, and neocortex, and really coach the parents on how do we engage in that process? So recognizing those pieces where the brainstem is out of sorts, where the limbic system, whatever it is, how do we identify those things? So basic brainstem things, I look at this and say, this is likely when a client struggles to provide the input, the rhythm for themselves. And they need rhythm to the, like a heartbeat rhythm. And so that would be something as a provider, as a parent, as, I'm going to help provide for them. That could be, I am helping tap, I'm helping sway back and forth. I could be putting on some very basic music with an like 60 to 80 beats per minute. It's very rhythmic and calming. That could be going for a walk if they're able to, if they're willing to engage with that. There's a lot of different things, and something that that I've been working on with Marty Smith is how do we take these things that we're utilizing here and transfer them. So there's more I'll share with you in just a little bit more tips and tricks for the lower regions. But then the diencephalon, how do we engage in brain gym activities, and how do we recognize when that diencephalon or that brainstem, how do we know when those things are starting to get disorganized? A simple thing that was a life changer for me, for our kids, was moving from a rocking chair to a glider. That was huge. And if I can share that, like, I wish we would have changed that a lot earlier, because if you think about it, a glider stays rhythmic. You have to do quite a bit of work to get it to dysregulate. But a rocking chair, if you're really going, you can tip it over, you can really get it, dysregulated. So getting a glider in your office can be a huge thing for you, or at home.
What is a glider?
So
is it on a track?
Yeah, if you think about like a lot of times you see them in the nurseries, and they just goes back and forth.
Yeah. Okay.
And so it'll keep that rhythm going for you. So that's helping to provide that rhythm that the client needs. We do a lot of things on brain gym activities, so crossing the midline to help regulate. And we do a sequential trail. So some of our clients, when they arrive here, we had a kid, we live on a pretty busy highway right here, and a kid would run into the highway because he was so upset upon his arrival. And we got a sequential trail to lead him into the barn, and looking at that. So being able to step, like my left over my right foot, being able to navigate those things, being able to start with big energy and kind of move myself to more towards midline. So they have little turtle shells. He jumps back and forth, and then a rope that he has to cross foot over foot. And then we have a connection point where he has a box, and he's telling me about something he's really excited about. And then we have a log that he's doing foot over foot, and wall push-ups. So there's just different things that are engaging that diencephalon, all things that we're going to be putting on the website soon, so that people can see and implement these things to help with regulation. But going back to the brainstem stuff that I would say, and I kind of mentioned this, the work that I've had to do is recognizing my own stuff and regulating, moving myself towards a place of regulation. I in doing this work, I said, is my internal state something I want someone else to duplicate? And so when I'm thinking about I'm noticing that a client is getting worked up, I go, wait a second, is what's going on inside for me something I want them to do as well? If not, how do I help regulate myself, calm myself down, so that I can help them move towards that place as well? One
of the things that I think is really interesting about this process is that when someone's coming to your facility, it's not as though they're just walking into your office and or a therapist is sitting in front of them, right? There's this indirectness about it. Yes, it's therapy, but it's very, very different. And I think that aspect of it is very obvious, but it's very crucial. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that is huge. And a lot of our clients will say at times, I'm not in therapy. Because it feels so organic. And that's the part that I guess, there's a lot of things that in session we can include that are just natural progressions in life, things that should feel relational and should feel just normal. And I love that that's the part here, is that we make everyday life things feel normal, but they're also very therapeutic at the same time when done with intention.
Yeah. I have to say this conversation was really amazing for me. I mean, I think I wasn't aware that there were these different aspects of equine therapy. And I mean, that's not my specialization, but what the work you're doing is so friggin' amazing, Michael. Thank you.
Thank you.
Really, I really appreciate it. How do people reach out to you? How do people get in contact with you?
Yeah, so I'm in the process of working on something with Marty Smith on the website morethaninformed.com. And we're taking some of these pieces. So Marty Smith is an occupational therapist that we have done quite a bit of work together to address the lower region organization part of the brain. I understood the limbic and neocortex, but she's really helped me with that lower region. And so we are putting together some of those pieces to where people can have those things. So right now on our website, we have 5 signs that you might be dysregulated. So as an adult, how do I then move towards a place of regulation? Then we have a lot of clients that love to run. And so at school or at home or at sessions, so strategies for stopping that runner. So just looking at those things, rolling with resistance, all those things are going to be on morethaninformed.com.
Morethaninformed.com. Okay.
Yes. And then people can reach out to me through gatewayfamilyservices.org.
Okay. I'll have both of those listed here at the show notes page at the traumatherapistpodcast.com. Once again, morethaninformed.com and Gateway Family Services. Michael, awesome, man. I'm gonna say I'm gotta have you back again. I love talking to you. This is amazing. It really is. It's so inspiring. I could just imagine what it would be like to be on a farm and work with a horse like that and help young individuals learn to relate, and that's what this is about. So thank you so much for
Yes.
joining me again.
Thank you so much for having me, and I look forward to chatting again soon.
All right, man. Take care.
You too. Thank you.